We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Dalad Amud Aleph in Meseches Gitin. This is Gittin Daf 74a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara is discussing what happens during the interim period. Let's say a husband says to his wife, "This is your get, imati. If I die from this particular illness, then this is your get." So what happens between the time that he gives the get and he actually dies? And the Gemara now is in the middle of a Tosefta, bringing the first opinion of the Tosefta, that she's considered his full wife. The Tosefta continues, Umetame, she's considered his full wife in the sense that he can be metame to her. Rashi explains, Umetame lo I kohenu, meaning to say, if he's a Kohen, so then he could be metame to her. Normally a Kohen is not allowed to become tame, but he can become tame if his wife dies. And the point over here, this entire list of items in the Tosefta, Klalo shel davar, the rule is, Harehi ki ishto, l'chol davar, she's considered his full wife for all matters. Ela she'ena tzricha hemenu, get sheni divrei Rabbi Yehuda, except that she's not going to require a second get. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rashi explains, she'ena tzricha hemenu get sheni, she doesn't need a second get, because again, the first get will be effective. Imemes, meaning to say, if he does die, she doesn't need another get. To samach lemisa have a get. Now the point over here is that right before the moment of death, that's when that first get is chal. That's why she's considered his full wife the entire time, until the very last moment, at the very last moment before he dies, then the get is considered to be chal. There's no need for a second get. That is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Meir says, Be'ilasa tuluya, her act of relations is dependence. It's a situation of suffix. Essentially, Rashi explains, Be'ilasa tuluya hadavar taloi ad sheyamus, or ad sheyamod mecholizeh. The matter is hanging until he dies, or until he doesn't die, until he gets better from the illness. Meaning to say as follows, Im meismin hacholi habale pater. If he dies from the illness, so then anyone who has relations with her is going to be pater, because essentially we say that she really was a divorced woman. Rabbi Meir mashmale me'es shani ba'olam hainu mishas nesina. Because according to Rabbi Meir, as opposed to Rabbi Yehuda was the first opinion of the Tosefta. According to this opinion of Rabbi Meir, what it really means me'es shani ba'olam, it's retroactive. It's going to be a get from the moment that it was given. According to Rabbi Meir, he's saying to her as follows: it's going to be a get retroactively if I die. Therefore, when he does die from the illness, it turns out that she really was a divorcee. At the time she had relations, let's say she had adultery, it's not really adultery. It turns out that she was divorced. Now, if it happens in the other direction, let's say he doesn't die, he gets better from the illness, so she's not divorced. So then whoever has relations with her, it's going to be a carbon chatos, because it's going to be as if she's a married woman. The difference between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda is Rabbi Yehuda says the get is only chal the moment before he dies. Rabbi Meir says it's chal retroactively. It's chal the moment that the get was given, and that's why it's be'ilasa tuluya. And the Tosefta continues, Rabbi Yossi says, be'ilasa suffix. Her be'ila is considered to be a suffix. How is that different than Rabbi Meir? Rashi explains, Rabbi Yossi Omer, be'ilasa suffix licheshayamas, means as follows: when he dies, it's a suffix. The mashma lei me'es shani ba'olam, because it's mashma again from the time that I'm in the world. Umiu misaf golon al shaz bia igrusha have ilo. But nevertheless, we do have a suffix at the moment of bia. Let's say that she has relations, she has this adultery. We still do have a suffix. According to Rabbi Yossi, is she considered a grusha or not? Why? Because even though Rabbi Yossi agrees with Rabbi Yehuda, even though Rabbi Yossi agrees with the first opinion of the Tosefta that the get is only chal the moment before he dies, but Shema Zuhi Shah Haru'i Lisamech Lamisa. Maybe this is the moment where he was going to die. This is the moment right before death. Shema Einazu. Maybe this is not the moment right before death. This is an opinion that we saw previously. Ve'ena grusha. She's not a grusha. Hilkach im yamos. Therefore, if he dies, maybe haba aleha asham tali, the person who has relations with her is going to bring an asham talui. Now, if he wouldn't die, let's say he gets better from the illness, certainly it's going to be a carbon chatas, because there was no divorce. But in terms of, let's say he does die from the illness, so every single moment that existed may have been the moment right before death. Now, it turns out later that moment was not the moment right before death, but we don't go back and clarify. We don't go back and say, it turns out this wasn't the moment. Rather, we say every single moment at that time is a suffix. Maybe he's going to die, maybe he won't die, and every single moment becomes a suffix, whether this is the moment right before death, and that's why Rabbi Yossi says be'ilasa suffix. And the Tosefta continues, v'chachamim the Chachamim say megureshes ve'ena megureshes, she's divorced but she's not divorced. Again, that also sounds like a suffix. Now the difference between the suffix of Rabbi Meir and the suffix of Rabbi Yossi and the Chachamim is clear, because Rabbi Meir's not really saying it's a full suffix at the end of the entire process. Rabbi Meir is saying it's tuluya, it's dependent. So we see later what happened based on the events later, whether whether he gets better, whether he dies from the illness, we can determine what happened, whether she was a married woman or a grusha. Rabbi Yossi is not saying that. Rabbi Yossi is saying if it turns out that he dies, it's still be loss a suffix. It's still going to be a suffix because every moment was a suffix when he was going to die. The only time it becomes clarified is if he gets better, then it's clear that she's not a divorcee. The Chachamim seem to be saying exactly the same as Rabbi Yossi. They're saying she's divorced, but she's not divorced, uvilvad sheyamus, as long as he dies. And Rashi says, Megureshes veina megureshes uvilvad sheyamus, v'hainu nami ka Rabbi Yossi. That's the same like Rabbi Yossi. That's the same as saying it's a suffix. The maisi asham taloi, you're bringing the carbon of an asham taloi, to sveika mashvula, because they're also saying it's a suffix. The Chacham and Rabbi Yossi is the identical opinion. Well, the Kamon mefarish. Now later on, the Gemara will explain mizone ika beinayu, that the difference between them is mizonos in terms of the sustenance that a husband has to provide for the wife. That the Gemara is going to explain momentarily. And the Gemara now continues and clarifies the points that Rashi just made. My iko bein Rabbi Meir le Rabbi Yossi. What's the difference between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi? Again, Rabbi Meir says it's teluya, it's dependent. Rabbi Yossi says it's a suffix. Rabbi Yochanan says asham taloi ika beinayu. The difference between them is whether the person brings an asham taloi. Let's say there's an act of relations that may or may not have been an adultery. Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir, lo maisi asham taloi. There's no need to bring an asham taloi, as we explained, because at the end this will be clarified. Either it is a case of adultery because it turns out she's not a divorced woman, it turns out that he gets better from the illness, or he dies from the illness and it is a divorce and she's not a divorced woman and there's no need to bring a carbon at all. That's the way Rabbi Meir would hold. Well, Rabbi Yossi, but according to Rabbi Yossi, Ma'isi Hashem Tolo, even if it turns out that it's a divorce, but every single moment, again, there's a suffix whether that would be the moment right before death, that would be the moment of divorce, and therefore the carbon that is brought is an Hashem Tolo, according to Rabbi Yossi, because it's a situation of suffix even at the end. When it turns out that the divorce was chal, it's still a situation of suffix at that moment. The Chachamim say megureshes ve'ena megureshes, that she's divorced but she's not divorced. And the Gemara asks, as Rashi already said, Chachamim hainu Rabbi Yossi. Aren't the Chachamim saying the exact same thing as Rabbi Yossi? They're saying it's a situation of suffix. And the Gemara answers, Ika beinayu de Rabbi Zera. The difference between them is based on the statement of Rabbi Zera. It's not that they're arguing in what Rabbi Zera says. It's based on what Rabbi Zera says. To Amar Rabbi Zera, because Rabbi Zera said, Amar Rabba bar Yirmiyah, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Zera said that Rabba bar Yirmiyah said that Shmuel said, Kol makom she'amru chachamim megureshes ve'ena megureshes. Anytime the chachamim use the term megureshes ve'ena megureshes, now that is the term the chachamim use in the Tosefta. Rabbi Yossi's term is be'i loss a suffix. It is going to be a suffix. The chachamim say megureshes ve'ena megureshes. Rabbi Zera was saying when the term megureshes ve'ena megureshes is used, ba'al chaye b'mezonos. In those situations, the husband does have to provide for her mezonos. He has to support her as if she is his wife, even though it's a suffix divorce. But she has to be supported according to the Chachamim. And Rashi explains, Ika beinayu de Rabbi Zera, the difference is based on what Rabbi Zera said. Kalamar Ika beinayu mizoni. What it really is saying is the difference is whether he has to provide mizonos. Again, when you use the term megureshes, veina megureshes, the husband does have to provide mizonos. Uchad Rabbi Zera, like Rabbi Zera said, velo de pligi b'de Rabbi Zera. They're not arguing within what Rabbi Zera said. The charvayu islu de Rabbi Zera. Everybody agrees with what Rabbi Zera said. If the term megureshes, veina megureshes is used, it means the husband is chayiv in mizonos. Umishamachi lo kari lo Rabbi Yossi megureshes, veina megureshes. That's the reason Rabbi Yossi doesn't use the phrase megureshes ve'ina megureshes, because of her lesla mizoni, because he holds that she doesn't get mizonos. And Rashi notes v'afa gav de Rabbi Yossi de masnis and tana megureshes ve'ina megureshes. Now, even though Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah does use the phrase megureshes ve'ina megureshes, not like the Tosefta where he avoids the phrase megureshes ve'ina megureshes, trei tanoi v'aliv de Rabbi Yossi. There's a machlokas tanoim what exactly Rabbi Yossi held in terms of mizonos. V'hainu chachamim de braisa, and the Rabbi Yossi, the version of Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah, is the same as the chachamim in this Tosefta. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hareza gitech al-menashe titni li masayim zuz. Let's say the husband says to his wife, this is your get, on the condition that you're going to give me 200 zuz. If you give me the money, then you'll be divorced. Harezu megureshes v'titein, so she is considered divorced, so long as she gives the money. If the condition is that it's on condition, the divorce is on condition that you give me the money from now until 30 days, you have 30 days to give me the money. So if she gives him the money within the 30 days, she's divorced. And if not, she's not divorced. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Ma'isa b'tzidon, there was an incident in Sidon, be'echad she'amar le'ishto, hareza gitech al menas shetitni li, it's the lacy. Person said to his wife, this is your get, on the condition that you give me back my cloak. V'yavda it's deliso, so then it was lost. She lost it. She couldn't give it back. V'yamru chachamim, the chachamim said about that, titan lo es dameh. She could still be divorced if she gives him the value of the cloak. She doesn't have to give him the actual cloak. And the Gemara says, "Mai v'titin." What does it mean in the Mishnah when it says that she has to give the money, and if she gives the 200 zuz, then she is divorced? Rav Huna Amar v'hi titin. Rav Huna says it means that she should give the money. If she gives the money, then it turns out that she was divorced. She fulfilled the condition. Rav Yehuda Amar, Rav Yehuda says licha shetitin. It really means to say when she gives the money, at that moment she will be divorced. And the Gemara says, "My beinayu." What's the difference between the two opinions? Iko beinayu sheniskara haget osha avid. The difference is, let's say the get is torn or the get is lost. Meaning, if you say that it all happens retroactively, like Rav Huna, so even if she loses the get, even if the get is destroyed, but still, if she gives the money retroactively at the moment the get was given to her, at that moment she had the get, so she's divorced retroactively. But according to Rav Yehuda, the divorce only takes place later at the moment she gives the money, and therefore the get has to be in her possession at that time when she gives the money. Only then will she be able to be divorced. Rashi explains, "Sheniskara haget kodem matan mos." Again, the get tore before she fulfilled the condition, before she gave the money. V'hi titein tanoi bialmo. If you say v'hi titein, meaning Rav Huna says it's just a condition. V'chi mekayim alei, when she fulfills the condition, igloi milsa. So then it turns out to mishas nesina gita have, at the moment of the giving of the get, it was a get. D'chol almanas me'achshavu. The almanas kein delakayim. The point is that the term almanas means from now, retroactively, and if the condition is fulfilled again, at that point when the condition is fulfilled, then retroactively from when the get was given, that's when the divorce will be chal. And the Gemara explains that Rav Huna Amar, Rav Huna says v'hi titen, she gives the money, einot tzricha himenu get sheni, meaning to say she's not going to need a second get once she gives the get, even if she lost or even if the first get was destroyed, but she's going to be divorced retroactively, as Rashi explained. Rav Yehuda Amar, Rav Yehuda says licha shetiten, no, she's only divorced when she gives the money, tzricha himenu get sheni. So if at the time she gives the money she no longer has the get is destroyed, she's going to require a second get. And the Gemara continues, Utanan Nami, we learned in the Mishnah also, Gabe Kiddushin Ki Agavna, we learned the Mishnah similarly by Kiddushin. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Ha'omer Li'isha Haread Mekudeshes Li, Amenas She'etein Loch Masayim Zuz. Let's say a person says to a woman, you are betrothed to me, he's marrying her on the condition that I give you 200 Zuz. Harehi Mekudeshes V'yitein. So it says a similar phrase as it says in our Mishnah, the Kiddushin is effective so long as he gives the money, so long as he fulfills the condition. V'yitmar, we have a Machlokas Amoraim as follows, My V'yitein. What does it mean v'yitein? We have the same machlokas amoraim between Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. Rav Huna Amar v'yitein. Rav Huna says that he gives the money, and then retroactively it's going to be a kiddushin. Rav Yehuda Amar licha sheyitin. Rav Yehuda says no, when he gives the money, at that point in time, that's when it will be a kiddushin. And the Gemara says, "My beinayu." What's the difference between the opinion of Rav Huna and the opinion of Rav Yehuda? Ika beinayu. The difference is by kiddushin. The difference is as follows: Shepashta yada the kibla kiddushin me'acher. Let's say she went ahead and she received the kiddushin from somebody else. So in such a situation where she received the kiddushin from someone else in the interim, so the question is, if it's chal retroactively, if the first kiddushin is chal retroactively, the first kiddushin will be chal and not the second. But if the first kiddushin is only chal at the time the condition is fulfilled, then the second kiddushin will be fulfilled and not the first. Rav Huna Amar v'hu yiten. Rav Huna says that he just has to give the money to Noah ba'almu. It's just a condition. Mekayim to Noah v'azali fulfills the condition and works retroactively. The first kedushin is chal. Rav Yehuda Amar l'cha sheyitin. Rav Yehuda says the first kedushin is only chal at the time that he actually gives the money. L'chi yoiv lo hu dahav kedushin. At the time he gives the money, at that time that's when it's a kedushin. Hasha lo have a kedushin. It's not going to be a kedushin retroactively from this point in time, and the second kedushin is going to be the one that is chal. And Tosas point out over here, Ika beinayu shepashta yada v'kibla kedushin. Again, the difference is, let's say she goes ahead and receives a kedushin in the interim period from a second individual. That's the nafkamina in terms of whether the first kedushin was chal retroactively or is chal at the time the condition is fulfilled. Tosas points out to le'el gabe get havim matzal nami shepashta yada v'chulu. By get also, we could have given the same nafkamina. By get, the nafkamina that we gave was, let's say the get gets torn or it's destroyed in the interim. We could have also said there's a nafkamina. Let's say she receives a kedushin from a second individual in that interim period. Here also, we could have given the same nafkamina as by get. We could have said there's a nafkamina. Let's say the shtar kiddushin is torn in the interim period. Tosfos points out, though, let's say you have a kiddushin that's done through money, so there would not be a nafkamina. Let's say the money is lost in the interim period. That's not true. That would make no difference. The even if the money was already consumed, still the kiddushin would be chal, because there the money is already considered to be fully in her rishus. That's what we say in kiddushin. And the Gemara continues, Utzricha, we need the machlokus between Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda in both cases, both by Gittin and by the Mishnah in Kiddushin. Why? Diashminan bagabi Kiddushin. Because let's say we only had the machlokus amoraim by the case in Kiddushin. Bahal kamar Rav Huna v'hu Yitin. You might say that over there Rav Huna says it's retroactive and the Kiddushin takes place immediately. Why? Mishum de l'krovakasi, because the whole point of Kiddushin is he's trying to bring her closer. He wants it to happen immediately. Aval gabi Gerushin, but when it comes to Gerushin where he's divorcing her, de l'rechokakasi, he's distancing her from him. So there, Ema Modalel Rav Yehuda, I might think that Rav Huna admits to Rav Yehuda that it happens at the last moment. V'yashmin and gabe Gerushin. Let's say I only had the machlokus Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda by Gerushin. B'hal kama Rav Huna. So there I would say maybe only by Gerushin I would say v'hi titein. Only there it's retroactive. Mishum de lo kosef lemitva, because over there he's not going to be embarrassed to ask her for the money. So we'll say Rav Huna will say by Gerushin the divorce actually happens right now. It's retroactive. And the husband will just go ahead and get the money from her. He's not embarrassed to ask her for the money. Aval gabe kiddushin, but when it comes to kiddushin, the chsifa lemitbes over there, he's giving her the money. That's the condition, that he has to give her money in order for the kiddushin to work. She doesn't want to claim the money from him. She doesn't want to have to ask for the money. So over there, ema modi leila Rav Yehuda, I might think that Rav Huna admits to Rav Yehuda that the kiddushin doesn't actually happen until the last moment, until the condition's actually fulfilled. V'yashmin and gabe kiddushin, and the Gemara says the other direction. If I only had the machlokes between Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda by kiddushin, b'hakam Rav Yehuda, so there Rav Yehuda would say l'chashiyitin, that the condition, or the kiddushin rather, is only chal when the condition is fulfilled, when he gives the money. Mishum dechsifa lemitve, because again over there she's embarrassed to claim the money from him. Aval gabe gerushin, but when it comes to gerushin the lo chasif lemitve, where he's not embarrassed to ask her for the money, ema modalei Rav Huna, I would say Rav Yehuda maybe admits to Rav Huna and says that it certainly happens from now. It's retroactive. V'yashmin and gabe gerushin, and again if I only had the machlokas amoraim by the case of divorce, b'hal kamer Rav Yehuda lechishatita, and that's where Rav Yehuda says it only happens when the condition is fulfilled. Mishum de l'rechoka kasi, as we said, because there he's trying to distance her from him. Aval gabe kiddushin, but by kiddushin de l'krova kasi, where he's bringing her close to him, ema modalei Rav Huna, I would say that maybe he admits to Rav Huna that it happens from now, it happens retroactively, and so that's why the Gemara says stricha. That's why it's necessary for Rav Yehuda and Rav Huna to argue in both cases. And Rashi explains lo chasef lemitba, when it comes to the case where he's asking the money from her, meaning in the case of the divorce, he's not embarrassed to ask her for the money. Ma'osav, he'll claim the money from her, he'll ask her for his money. Hilkach, therefore, lo tzarech le lemisli gita b'matan mos, therefore he doesn't need to say that the divorce is only going to be chal at the moment the money is received. Ume'achshav kamarla, he's really saying it's from right now, and he's not embarrassed to ask her for the money, so the condition will be fulfilled. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question from the following Brisa. This is from the Tosefta. Hareze gitech al menashe titni li masayim zuz. Same case, let's say he says to her, this is your get on condition that you give me 200 zuz. It says explicitly, Afa bisha nikra hagedo shenevad, even though the get is torn or it's lost, miguresha, she will be divorced. You see that it's retroactive. You see it's from now. Well, acher lo tinasei ad shetitin, but the Tosefta says she shouldn't marry someone else until she actually does fulfill the condition. V'yotanya, further we learn in the Brisa, Hareze gitech al menashe titni li masayim zuz. Again, if he says to her, this is your get on condition that you give me 200 zuz, v'mason, he dies. Nosna eina zakuk liyavam, if she gives the money, so then she doesn't have to worry about yivam, she's divorced. Lo nosna, if she didn't give the money, zakuk liyavam, so then she's not considered divorced, she's considered a widow, and she has to do yivam because the condition was not fulfilled. And Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, no, even after he dies, no senis la'aviv or la'achiv or la'echem min akrovim, she can still fulfill the condition by giving the money to his father or his brother or one of the relatives. And the Gemara points out, Ad kan lo pligi ela demar savar liva lo liyarshay, umar savar liva afilo liyarshay. The only machlokas tanoim over here between the Tanakam and Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is when he says that you have to give me money, does he mean me and not those who inherit me, or does he mean me and even those who inherit me? In other words, is she able to fulfill the condition after death? That's a machlokas tanoim. However, everybody agrees it's retroactive. To kuli alma mia to nohave, everybody agrees it's just a condition, and the get is chal retroactively. That's clear from this Tosefta, and therefore to Yufta de Rav Yehuda, let's say that this is a refutation of the opinion of Rav Yehuda. And the Gemara says, Amar Amar Lach Rav Yehuda, Rav Yehuda will respond to you, Hamani Rebbe. This Tosefta is following the opinion of Rebbe. The Amar Rav Huna Amar Rebbe, because Rav Huna said that Rebbe said, Kol Omer Al Manas, Kol Omer Me'achshav Dami. Anyone who says Al Manas, it's like saying from now. It's retroactive. It's chal right now when the get is given. However, Upligi Rabbanan Allah, but the Rabbanan disagree with Rebbe. Ve'anoda Amri Ki Rabbanan, and I, Rav Yehuda, I follow the opinion of the Rabbanan. And the Gemara continues along the same lines. V'yamar Rabbi Zeir, and Rabbi Zeir said, Ki avinan beBavel, when I was in Bavel, Amrinon, they said, Hada Amar Rav Huna Amar Rebbe, that which Rav Huna said, that Rebbe said, Kala Omer Al Manas, Kala Omer Me'achshav Dami, that if the phrase Al Manas is used, it means Me'achshav, it means from now, retroactively. Pligi Rabbanan Aleh. So they said over there that the Rabbanan disagree with Rebbe. Kisaliki, but when I went up to Eretz Yisrael, Ashka'achtei Rabbi Asi, I found Rabbi Asi, the Yosef v'Ko'amar Mishmei Rabbi Yochanan. He was sitting and he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Hakol Modim. There's no machlokas about that. Everybody agrees. Ba'omer Al Manas, Ka'omer Me'achshav Dami. If a person says Al Manas, that's like saying Me'achshav, that's retroactive. Lo nechliku ela b'Mehayom u'la'achar misa. The real machlokas between the Rabbanan and Rebbe is, let's say the person says Mehayom u'li'achar misa, and Rashi explains Lo nechliku ela b'Mehayom u'la'achar misa. The machlokas is when the phrase Mehayom u'la'achar misa is used, the Rabbanan misafkalu, because the Rabbanan say that's a doubt. In that case, the Rabbanan have a doubt. Itanoa have ichazora have. Is that a condition or is it a retraction? When the person says Mehayom and then says u'la'achar misa, is he retracting? Well, the Rebbe vadai tanoa have. And according to Rebbe, it is certainly a condition. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Dalid Amud Beis.